The accused has never expressed any remorse or sorrow for the lives taken.
It's an age-old question. What drives seemingly ordinary men and women to undertake some of the most atrocious and often bizarre crimes imaginable?
Always there. Did she die quickly? Did the fumes get her? Did the smoke get her? Did she burn?
Are some people born evil, born with criminal intent?
Police! Police! Down on your knees! Get down! Get down! Down on your
The
knees!
perpetrator of these horrendous acts is the most depraved individual I've ever come across. I've never seen anything like this.
Now, the case files that tell the true stories. This is surely one of the saddest sights. It's unbearably cruel and really desperately unfair. But a family gathering for the Morecambes means a visit to the cemetery.
Remember Daniel used to always bring flowers?
Yeah, he liked them.
After school I'd get...
Always picked them for you.
They have no choice, because this is where Daniel is, and nothing's ever going to change that.
Some crimes are just so horrific that it seems that the only way to explain them is that it's evil. But can horrific crimes have an explanation?
Well, I think they can at some level. Increasingly, we're learning about the brain much more than we've ever known. I think we're learning about the importance of biology, the importance of genetic markers for violence and perpetrating evil acts. Is it the evil intent of the individual, or is that intent affected by their neurological makeup?
So the way that their brain works is so different, or that there is no empathy or understanding of what they're doing?
That seems to be what's coming out of some of the neuroscience literature, our analysis of how the brain functions over time and how it impacts decision-making, particularly in the context of, say, sex offending or violent offending.
It's now more than 10 years since Daniel was brutally murdered. A decade of absolute despair for Bruce and Denise, Daniel's older brother Dean, and Brad, Daniel's twin.
What is it that you miss the most about Daniel?
Probably just being a normal family. He always used to bring me flowers and buy little knickknacks, but he's always going to be that 13-year-old, isn't he? Everyone knows that face.
I think, you know, to watch him grow up and become the man he should have been, you know.
Daniel, you see Humpty Dumpty?
Humpty Dumpty doesn't he get nothing for.
Good boy.
Daniel, me. Hello.
You'd think that Queensland's Sunshine Coast is a wonderful place to raise a family. Years ago, it coaxed the Morecambes to move from Victoria. It's nearly 2,000 kilometres away. And these home videos typically show a young family's fun. But they also reveal why Daniel's abduction and murder has touched all of us so deeply. In these pictures, we see ourselves and our own kids. It was early Sunday afternoon on the 7th of December 2003, just 3 weeks shy of Daniel's 14th birthday. Now, he decided he wanted a haircut and to buy a few Christmas presents for his family. So he left home about 1 kilometre away and walked here to catch a bus. Tragically, for Daniel, the difference between life and death came down to just 3 minutes. A tiny moment in time, but just long enough for evil to strike.
Is that something in all crimes, that an opportunity may present itself?
Indeed, there has to be the opportunity for the offence to occur. There may be intent, but the desire to follow through on that intent is embodied in the situation, the moment. And so many offences are associated with two people coming together in an instant. Those characteristics, if altered, might alter the sort of outcomes and the life course of those individuals.
As Daniel waits at the bus stop that day, evil is approaching. Brett Peter Cowan is driving alone in his white four-wheel drive. He's 34 and known to police for a string of crimes, mostly drugs and theft, but more seriously, vicious attacks and rapes on young boys. Tragically for Daniel, out of sight of the road is the bus he should have been catching. But in this cruel twist of fate, it's broken down. Brett Cowan drives past the broken down bus, and then around the next bend, he spots the stranded 13-year-old.
He knew the area incredibly well. Saw the kid in the red t-shirt, his urges have come back, and he's a filthy person. So he's probably thought to himself, it's time.
In that instant, the seasoned predator decides to strike. He takes the very next exit, less than 50 metres from Daniel, then quickly doubles back to a car park behind where Daniel is waiting.
Perhaps we should have, as parents, equipped Daniel with additional skills to recognise potential danger and to run away when a goofy person's perhaps trying to attract his attention, and in a moment of weakness, encourage him to go with him in his vehicle. You know, that's just a terrible thing that haunts us, to be honest.
At the bus stop, Cowan loiters behind Daniel, pretending to also wait for the bus. Witnesses remember Cowan had a distinctive stance. They also remember seeing Daniel casually drawing in the dirt. Then, the best luck for Cowan, but the worst for Daniel. A replacement bus doesn't stop, even though the driver knows Daniel is there. The timing here is critical.
Is that the last bus?
I think so.
Daniel doesn't know it, but another bus is coming to pick him up, and it's just 3 minutes away. 3 minutes. But less than 3 minutes is all it takes for a predator like Brett Cowan to swoop.
How do you think Cowan convinced Daniel to get into the car?
Oh, that's one thing I just don't understand. I don't know. Maybe he was frustrated, but I don't know how he convinced him. I don't know.
Cowan doesn't take Daniel to the shops as he promised. He drives 30 minutes south to a secluded farm bordered by bush. By this time, young Daniel Morecambe must have been beside himself with fear.
If you were sitting in the passenger seat with an unknown driver down that dirt road in feral bush, you would know, your body would be telling you, I'm in a hell of a lot of trouble here, and you'd probably smell death, you know. You've really got to be thinking, I've got to get out of here, if he was able to.
What exactly happened to Daniel in this remote bushland will never be known. Cowan, a lifelong crim and a straight-out liar, claims he panicked and strangled Daniel very soon after arriving at the farm. He says he then dumped the little boy in the bush.
When did you first realise something was wrong?
It was about 4:15. I just got a weird feeling, I don't know what it was. So I said to Bruce, I'm going to go up to the bus stop to see if Daniel's there. And I saw the broken down bus being put on a tow truck. So Bruce went down to see if he was on the bus that left at 5:05, so he got there about 5:30 when he came back, and we knew straight away there was something wrong. We knew that night.
After doing their own immediate search for their son, Bruce and Denise called in the police. As hours became days and days became weeks, the search for young Daniel Morecambe just got bigger and bigger.
If anyone's got any information and it's on their conscience, could they please come forward and unease our burden.
He very quickly became Australia's most recognised missing person, and that was thanks to the unrelenting efforts of his mum and dad. Assistant Commissioner Mike Condon says police first interviewed Cowan, a known pedophile, as soon as 2 weeks after Daniel's disappearance. His alibi was full of holes, but police still didn't have the proof they needed to arrest him.
Considering his past, considering that he'd placed himself at the spot where Daniel had gone missing, considering that there had been some doubt about his timings, why wasn't he the person of highest interest?
Because there were other persons of interest who were familiar with the area, that if you were ticking off boxes, they ticked the boxes as well.
The police had 20,000 leads. They had 15,000 calls to Crime Stoppers and this massive public interest in the case. A little boy missing. It made a huge impact, didn't it?
So many people will remember the images and remember this tragic case. I think it strikes at the heart of our social expectation about children growing up safely. I think it strikes at the heart of any parents wanting their children to be independent and the fears associated with moving out of the family home to go on a routine shopping trip.
And here we had two very articulate, very courageous parents who kept it in the public eye.
Their heartfelt concerns about what they may have done to have protected Daniel, the continued campaigns, the media attention that they received as a result.
Now, let's fast forward 7 years, and the Morecambes once again have a glimmer of hope they may finally find out what happened to their son. It comes at an inquest into the handling of the case. Key detectives and police appeared before the inquest, as did other suspects and a key person of interest. That man was Brett Peter Cowan, who is now living on the other side of the country in Perth.
As Cowan was walking into the courtroom, I just got a really cold shiver and the whole courtroom just went, oh my God, and I turned around to Bruce and I went, my God, that's him.
Independently of the inquest, police were reviewing the Morecambe case in more detail. And this time, Cowan's alibi fell apart. He was due to fly home to Perth after 2 days in the witness box. And it was now police launched one of the most audacious undercover operations imaginable.
Cowan is now the prime suspect. How would you describe the police operation that happens from there?
Absolutely remarkable. Who would have thought such a wacky covert operation would work like that?
Prime suspect Brett Cowan was on the long flight back home to Western Australia after appearing at the inquest. But police had boldly planted an undercover cop right next to him, going by the name of Joe. Over beer and small chat, they exchanged phone numbers and contact had been made. From there, undercover police in Perth, posing as a band of criminal brothers, recruit Brett Cowan into their gang. Their organised crime spree starts with small-time drug dealing and grows into debt collecting,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
pimping and buying and even selling weapons. This is high-risk stuff. Cowan could catch on at any moment, but Cowan's trust is won over.
What are the pressures of police working undercover in a situation like this?
When you see the footage, you can only imagine almost the theatrics required to maintain the story, to lure in the offender, to get all of the requisite information to establish the proofs for charges to be laid over a protracted period across 2 states. I think it's incredibly high-risk work, intense personal work.
The extent of the police sting in Western Australia was breathtaking. More than 20 different scenarios leading to the most important setup of all, this. In a hotel room, a meeting between Cowan and the crime gang boss, Arnold. Cowan is being offered a role in a big drug job, of which his take will be 100 grand. So he doesn't jeopardise the deal or the gang. He needs to come clean on his dirty past.
You've done the Daniel Morecambe murder.
If he does come clean, Arnold promises to fix it. Cowan is sucking it in. It's so quiet, almost nonchalant. But this is the very moment undercover police have been working and hoping for. Cowan confesses to Daniel's abduction and murder.
So what do I need to fix?
Yeah, okay. You know, yeah, I do.
Oh, okay, so you did it.
Hearing him explain what he did and how he did it, does that answer all the questions you have over what happened to Daniel?
He is a lying pedophile, so you've really got to assess what you can check, what you can verify, but what he actually did, you know, nothing stacks up.
He never got to molest him or anything like that. He panicked and I panicked and grabbed him around his throat and before I knew he was dead.
Why didn't Daniel have clothes on? I don't understand that. And why wasn't Daniel's belt looped through his pants? You know, was he bound up in his belt? Really, we don't want to go there. Sometimes it's best we don't know.
It's the 11th of August 2011. He doesn't know it yet, but this is Brett Cowan's last day of freedom. Not only have the police recorded a video confession, on the pretext of making sure there's no incriminating evidence left at the site, they've even managed to convince Cowan to bring them back to Queensland, where he killed Daniel. The police net was closing in.
We had a number of officers hidden. We also had recording equipment so that we were recording the conversations and videoing what was occurring.
Cowan, still unaware of the trap, takes the undercover police on a grisly tour of the area. The undercover cops mark their path to later retrace their steps. And then the arresting officers pounce.
Police! 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 Down on your knees! Get down! Get down! Down on your knees! Get down!
Don't move. Brett Cowan, you are under arrest for the murder of Daniel Morecambe. You have the right to remain silent.
It took police 4 days to finally locate the exact spot where Daniel's body was dumped.
We had found a Globe shoe, which was similar to what Daniel was wearing at the time he disappeared. A couple of days later, they found the left shoe just over here.
So then I guess the drive was to find Daniel himself.
That's correct. I was quietly optimistic that we were going to find more.
Inspector Parnhouse was right. While this gully was being searched, the police diving team was concentrating on Coochin Creek, a few kilometres away. It's where Cowan tossed Daniel's clothes after murdering him. Here, they found remnants of Daniel's underpants, a belt, and his incredibly well-preserved shorts. But it still took another 4 weeks of meticulous hand sifting through the dense undergrowth to finally locate what they were here for.
17 fragments in total. It was a major find for us.
And then, a further 2.5 years after Daniel was found and Cowan arrested, came the guilty verdict everyone was waiting for.
When a killer like Brett Cowan is convicted, what's the impact then of the family of the victim moving on?
Moving on, I think, is very difficult. There are all sorts of reminders. There are all sorts of moments that keep people often stuck in grief and loss, as you would expect, the loss of any loved one, but under such horrific circumstances adds a dimension to their kind of grief and loss. So, for example, the anniversaries associated with birth and death, moving around an environment where will always be seen as a crime scene, perhaps, in their eyes. being reminded every time there's a story about a missing boy, a missing child, must take them back into just the most heart-wrenching set of circumstances.
Compelling evidence has found beyond reasonable doubt Mr. Cowan's guilt.
We often define evil as what is morally wrong, sinful or wicked. Evil can also be a result of bad actions stemming from an innately bad character.
A desperate and painstaking rescue operation is underway after a massive explosion in Rozelle.
Blew me straight out of bed, onto my feet.
As you're running out, the floor's just falling in behind you, ceiling's coming down.
What happened here in the early hours of the 4th of September 2014 was frightening and horrific.
There was just flames, there was shrapnel, shattered windows, and you could just hear the building collapsing.
A mother and her baby boy are among those feared trapped in the rubble.
Local firefighters did their best, but this blast was so ferocious, nothing could save 27-year-old Chris Noble, 31-year-old Bianca O'Brien, and her beautiful 11-month-old son Jude. One man, convenience store owner Adil Khan, was pulled from the rubble, injured but alive. At first, he claimed to be a victim.
Who burnt down the property?
I've no clue.
But now we know he's the killer.
Adil Khan, a different kind of evil, who purely for his own benefit ended up taking so many lives.
In terms of difference, this is a crime of great self-interest. There's clearly an economic motive. One wonders about pressures, financial pressures that drive the thinking, that limits the capacity to fully understand the consequences, the probably relatively obvious consequences in hindsight that others would be affected and lives lost.
Khan deliberately blew up his neighbourhood store because he wanted to claim a $225,000 insurance payout.
He knew we were up there. Chris's car was parked out front.
It's just horrific. He's an evil man.
For the people living above the convenience store, the evening before the blast was as normal as any other. A few cold beers for flatmates Todd Fisher, Corey Cameron and Chris Noble, the sporty son of Liz and Ross.
Incredibly tough, physically strong, but had a heart of gold. They're lovely memories to have. Lovely memories.
Just next door, Anthony Carroll was eating a quick meal he'd just bought from Adil Khan's shop.
Bought myself a can of Coke and some chips, as I did most nights.
And it was family time in the neighbouring flat of Bianca and John O'Brien with their baby Jude, a beloved first grandchild for Bianca's dad, Bill.
This is the last time I saw this little boy. We had a little power nap on the sofa. And his father came to pick him up to take him home, and that's the last I saw him.
On the night of the explosion, in the flats above and bordering the convenience store, everyone was asleep, except Bianca's partner John, who'd left early for work. They were all blissfully unaware that for the past 5 hours, Adil Khan had been preparing his store for a catastrophic explosion. He used between 20 and 30 litres of fuel to make petrol bombs, which he placed in all 3 of the major rooms of his store. He even packed paper and cardboard around them to make them even more flammable. He then created one long petrol-laden wick with rags tied together, and then he left the building, closing the door behind him before lighting the fuse. It may have looked like he knew what he was doing, but he didn't. The force of the fire is extraordinary, hurling Khan almost 3 metres back into the alley and shaking the very foundations of the building.
The cracking of electricity, there was the crumbling of the building, there was the twisted metals.
Anthony woke confused and disorientated, then rushed to put on his prosthetic leg and get out.
The fire brigade turned up, and then there was the police and all the other emergency services.
First, I thought it was a massive gas explosion.
Todd and Corey were also woken by this hellish nightmare that quickly surrounded them.
I was like, I need to get out of here. And then the floor started to sink through like a sinkhole. So I jumped over my bed, and then when I went to get to the door, the ceiling fell on top of me. And I was like, oh shit, this is not good. And then I went into him next door, opened the door, got him, he didn't know what was going on.
Ran by Chris's room, and Chris, let's go. And come on. He said, I'm coming.
Yeah, we could hear him. I couldn't open the door. I was trying to open the door, and then I let go of the door because I thought maybe he's trying to get out as I'm trying to open it. So I let go, but I wasn't panic or anything from him, was it? It was just like, I'm coming.
Todd and Corey now race to their only exit, a locked glass sliding door. Todd smashes through it, and they both jump 1.5 metres onto a neighbouring rooftop to safety.
We got out and then we jumped off over the balcony down to the road, and we checked each other and we went, shit, Chris is not with us.
Watch carefully. This is the moment Corey and Todd realise Chris is still inside the burning building. What we don't see is Corey scrambling back to the balcony to try to save his mate.
I'm just screaming for him, and you could hear him just, struggling for life. And
as soon as we got out, the whole thing was engulfed in flames. It's like literally 5 seconds after we got out. So if we didn't get out that, we would have been dead. There's no way.
It's just the most hopeless feeling, When you hear him, you can't do anything about it, so.
A few hours later, it was early morning in Chris's hometown of Canoundra in country New South Wales, over 300 kilometres away.
I went across the kitchen to put the jug on, and I could see that there was a message on my phone, and had a look, and it said, I love you. And my stomach immediately just lurched. And then I thought, no, you're being an over-anxious mother. Don't be like that. So I sent a message back to him. What are you doing awake at this time? Then when I didn't get a reply or anything for him, I thought, So I turned the Today Show on, and they had this fire in Darling Street, and I thought, gee, that looks close to where Chris is. So send him a message, the fire looks really close to you. Are you all right?
It was a message Chris would never read. Trapped in his burning bedroom with his door jammed and bars on his window, he had time only to say goodbye.
How long was he alive after he'd sent the message? And you think, why wasn't he getting out? And felt that it wasn't good enough to get a message like that from somebody at the last bit. But then you remember how much he just loved so many people. He was known for saying, I love you, to his mates, to his friends, to his brother, to his sister. That I can't believe that you can be that strong to actually do that when, there's so much noise and disaster all around you.
Just on the other side of Chris's bedroom, another tragedy was unfolding. His neighbours, Bianca and Jude, mother and child, were also trapped.
Help! Anyone! Help! Did she die quickly? Did the fumes get her? Did the smoke get her? Did she burn? It's always there. Did I consider always there? Beck, I hope you really didn't suffer. They found them in the rubble with Bianca on top of Jude, holding Jude, protecting Jude. There's no words that I can tell you how we felt and how the family felt. There's no words that you can say.
Hang on, there's someone here.
Adil Khan too could have so easily been killed by the blast. But the man who deserved it least was somehow protected from the explosion. Paramedics found him fighting for life beneath the rubble. What makes an already terrible situation worse is that the man responsible for this carnage continued to claim he didn't do it.
Did you burn down your shop? No.
And has concocted a truly preposterous explanation for the explosion.
You said last night that one of them showed you a gun. Is that correct? Yeah.
Khan claims 3 men came into his convenience store, tied him up and robbed him. And if you can believe this, then for some unknown reason stuck around for 5 hours preparing to blow up his shop.
They took my money, wallet, cell phone.
One of the things that really upset me that he was so that arrogant that he thought that ordinary Australian people would actually believe the garbage that he came up with.
Incredibly hard to fathom. I just can't get my head around how anybody could be that selfish.
He studied, he planned. He's got ice going through his veins, this guy.
Put it over here and I'll put it through the sieve.
Arson investigator Greg Kelly has been combing through the ashes of suspicious fires for more than 30 years.
You've obviously got evidence of an explosion, which is not natural to a fire scene. That would always have the hairs up on the back of the neck saying, OK, something's not right here.
Ty, stick on.
As in most suspicious fires, police use sniffer dogs, quickly identifying that Khan used petrol to blow up his shop. They retrieved fragments of the milk crates and the cardboard paper he used to make his petrol bomb. They even found the lighter he used to set the place on fire.
And mounting evidence at the obliterated store pointed to a clumsy Khan. He was at the scene. He had a face mask in his pocket and his business was on the brink of going broke. But the real breakthrough in the case came through modern technology. He was captured on CCTV and he was trying to fill jerry cans with petrol, 38 litres of petrol, in a service station that he had never visited before. He said, and this was a crazy explanation, that he was doing an experiment, that he wanted to see if he could make fuel last longer by mixing it with water.
They just tied me and put a rubbish bag on my eyes.
Khan continued his outlandish claims. He said that moments before the blast, he'd been able to make a miraculous escape from the 3 mysterious armed robbers who were holding him captive.
Both look Italian or Greek. So we've got one African or Aboriginal. Yeah. And then one Italian or Greek. Yeah. And the other one was European of some type. Yeah.
Coming up next...
You killed these people, man. There's no manslaughter, murder. You are guilty. Torture, punishment for sitting through and looking at a person in front of you that killed your children and destroyed your family. Maybe it would have been different. It wouldn't have changed, but still would have been different if he came out and said, you know what, look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to kill these people, but for him to say and deny everything and come up with these stories,
You're just trying to blame me about the whole incident. He's dragged this out for 2 years. He's lied. Admit it. I'm guilty. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't mean for it to be this big. But he didn't do that.
For Anthony Carroll, along with fellow survivors Corey Cameron and Todd Fisher, and Liz and Ross Noble and Bill Karamalevsky, the day of the verdict was the day they all hoped for justice.
The accused has never expressed any remorse or sorrow for the lives taken, and that has been really, really difficult for us.
The jury found Khan guilty of the murder of Chris Noble, who lived directly above the shop.
Chris was loved by so many people. We will miss everything about him every day for the rest of our lives.
But for Bianca and Jude, the jury settled on the lesser charge of manslaughter because the family lived next door to Khan's shop, not directly above it.
We sat and we looked at each other and we started to cry, because we felt empty. You killed these people, man. Your actions killed these people. There's no manslaughter, murder. You are guilty of killing these people.
It's been about, almost 2 years, and, you still think about it every day.
Get up.
Good girl, sit. I don't sleep very much. You think about how bad flashbacks. I remember when I first got back out home, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and the first thing, I'd be out a window, trying to get out a window, just nightmares and just terrors.
It's like a hole. There's a whole big hole missing.
Oh, love you.
Love you.
There's a joy gone.
And all because of a selfish act. Don't wish it on anybody.
The evil in some men can have many victims, but when those victims are innocent children, it becomes near impossible to understand a human being could be so cruel.
You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have your own counsel. We have 6 warrants for your arrest.
The perpetrator of these horrendous acts is the most depraved individual I've ever come across. 26 years of policing. And I've worked in 9 different countries. I've worked in a lot of different jobs. I've never seen anything like this.
Peter Scully, here is a man, a paedophile, a murderer, killing children on demand. This has got to be the definition of pure evil.
Absolutely. Evil, barbaric, brutal. The capacity to share images across the globe through the internet and sell access to this imagery is despicable. It's horrid. There may well be questions around his mental state. There may well, over time, be learnings about what drives the impulses of someone who ends up committing offences of this kind.
Australian Peter Scully is finally in jail, likely never to walk free again, charged with kidnapping, rape, torture and murder, and selling the gruesome videos he's made which detailed the terror and pain of his child victims. Simply put, Peter Scully is evil. It was in 2011 when Scully fled Australia for the Philippines after allegedly fleecing dozens of trusting investors of millions of dollars in property and IT scams. While local police were aware of the fraudster, no one could guess he would soon ignite a global manhunt, wanted for the most horrific crimes against children.
She's alive. I really didn't think she would be alive. She was hospitalized.
Australian Federal Police Officer Paul Hopkins has been embedded with a crack team of Filipino investigators who were relentlessly hunting down Scully.
What is the case against Peter Scully?
There's 2 cases in the Philippines. The first case is the slavery, the fact that he's kept 2 young girls in a house and sexually abused them, tied them in dog chains and allegedly made videos of them. That's one case. The second case involves the holding of young victims and sexually abusing them, and then it went to violence against the young victims as well as abuse, and then unfortunately and horrifically ended in the death of one of the victims.
Scully agreed to be interviewed by journalist Tara Brown.
So when you were on the run, how great was the urge?
Urge for what?
To find young girls.
Hardly ever had an urge. It's not like a hungry dog that's got to feed every 3 hours or 4 hours. It's not like that. And it's really not. It's almost not an urge.
Why do it?
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
Peter Scully filmed his atrocities at his home in Mindanao, a remote part of the Philippines. Then he sold his made-to-order videos to pedophiles around the world.
Anything that the consumer or the member of the group will tell him to do, he will do, to the point of, killing the child in the course of the sexual abuse.
That's probably like September.
Agent Janet Francisco leads the investigation. She believes Scully not only had a hungry global market of pedophiles, he also had local help. He even recruited his girlfriends, just teenagers themselves, to seek out many child victims. 18-year-old Carmian Alvarez was one of Scully's girlfriends, and today she's in jail for what she did for him.
He said to me, "Can we adopt some street kids?" And I said, "I don't know, I don't think so. What if my sister to live with us?" He said to me, "No, I don't want your sister, I want a street kid to help them." He said he wants 9 and 12. Then I meet these 2 kids. Then I say to these kids, "You want to come with me?" And then the kids say, "Yes." Then after that, the kids have what they call
ropes.
Yeah, not ropes for the dogs, like
collar.
Yeah, collar. They have that.
So when you return 2 days after picking these girls up off the street,
yes,
they are wearing dog collars.
Yes.
And they tell you that Peter has already hurt them.
Yeah.
This is Rosie, the 12-year-old plucked from the streets with her 9-year-old cousin.
After eating, Peter asked us to be naked, and we were photographed, and he took a video.
This is a truly shocking story. Rosie tells how she was forced to perform sex acts on her cousin as Scully directed and filmed it.
The following day after breakfast, we were asked to dig a grave.
Why did you have to do that? What were you told would happen to you?
That we will be buried in the graves that we are digging.
It wasn't until 5 days after kidnapping them that Carmian found the sympathy to unchain Rosie and her cousin, and they made a terrifying dash for freedom before bravely going to the police. Carmian was arrested and Scully on the run.
Why do you rape young children?
The answer is, I don't know. I don't know the real answer.
Is it because you're depraved?
Depraved? Maybe. What I'm looking for is the real reason why I took that road and what drove me to it. Because in Australia I wasn't like that. In the first 12 months here I wasn't like that.
What is his motivation? Is it power? Is it money? Is it sexual?
I suspect there's a cocktail of motivations or desires. I suspect some are associated with an impulse, a desire for sexual activity with young children. There's an audience to his activities that then we might consider notoriety, popularity. There is a financial benefit, but clearly not of a kind that diminishes those original desires and impulses.
In finding the strength to go to the police, Rosie would help expose the full horror of Scully's most degenerate operation. Even younger victims, possibly held captive for years, and more pedophiles willing to pay $10,000 to watch vile stuff like this.
A video had surfaced in Europe, and that video involved a white male and Asian females molesting children, very young children, as young as 2 and even younger. That video was called Daisy's Destruction, and there was a series of these videos. And so around the world, police and government organisations were doing what they do and searching for where this could have occurred and trying to find the victims.
A worldwide hunt was on to catch one of the worst, and it was Dutch police who isolated the abuse to the Philippines and at least 8 local children. But still, no one knew who the abuser was. He pixelated his own face in his horrendous videos, but Scully couldn't hide his Australian accent, and it took another Australian, Paul Hopkins, to spot it.
I said, I'm so sorry, it appears to be an Australian, and that's awful. So that's how the case came together. It just came together by everyone doing their little bit, and finally then as the hunt for him was on.
So he's laying low. He was last seen about 2 weeks ago in this area, so we're close, but we just need that one breakthrough, and that's what we're doing today. Terrific. Okay, thank you very much.
We're now with Australian Federal Police Officer Paul Hopkins and his Philippine counterparts, who are close to catching Australia's worst pedophile.
So there's so far identified 15 filming locations, and in the end I've identified 5 houses at least.
By going house to house, the Filipino investigators found exactly where the abuse took place in the Daisy videos. Amazing police work, meticulously matching frame for frame the backgrounds with the stairs, the tiles, and the windows of the house in which Scully lived. Amongst a number of girls, there are 3 main victims featured in the Daisy Destruction video. Daisy, who was barely 18 months old, Cindy, who was 11, and Liza, 12, all handed over by their parents in the mistaken belief that Scully would feed and house and educate them. As the net closes in on tracking down Scully, investigators are just as desperate to find the 3 girls.
So they'll know that if there've been any white foreigners about there. Is that
Yes,
why we're going to them?
Yes, because we cannot really have the exact location of
The baby of the group, Daisy, has miraculously survived after she's rescued by her family.
Yes, good afternoon.
But the team's exhaustive search for Liza and Cindy is going nowhere until this moment.
Magkaklase kayo? Oh, ano na siya? Anong pangalan niya? Liza. Nasaan na siya ngayon? You know, she can identify the girl. So it's a breakthrough, you know?
Liza is alive, but for 11-year-old Cindy, help has come too late. Sadly, this is where Cindy died. She was repeatedly raped, tortured, and eventually murdered by Scully. Her body buried out the back in this shallow grave.
It's awful. No, it's just terrible. No, it's incredible. Incredibly bad.
Cindy was the little girl Agent Janet Francisco was still desperately hoping to find alive. Before Scully strangled her to death, she was made to dig her own grave. As always, he filmed everything. It is painstaking work in a dark, cramped space. But in death, Cindy has been given the care and respect she was denied in life.
Do you know that yesterday police dug up Cindy's bones, that she was buried in the house that they lived in?
I really don't know.
Four years after fleeing Australia and committing unspeakable crimes, This is the moment Scully was caught.
Give me your name. It's Peter Scully. What? It's Peter Scully. Peter Scully. We have 6 warrants for your arrest. Wow. Okay?
Already, investigators believe they have a watertight case against this father of 2.
You put on your pants. Yeah.
Can I get my cigarette? Is it possible?
Now, one of the most reviled pedophiles in the world was behind bars, treated like any other common criminal. Except Scully was a big fish, and the Filipino police knew it.
Why would you abuse an 18-month-old child?
Well, for a start, I didn't. And
well, that's not true, is it?
It is true. No, I'm sorry, you're
Oh,
wrong.
I'm sorry. How old was she?
Huh?
How old was she, Peter?
You are confusing different things. I don't want to get into that.
How old was she?
Huh?
How old was she?
I don't want to get into any of that yet. All right, I will go back to this now. No comment.
It's the coward's way out, isn't it?
It's the realistic way out.
As well as the usual fingerprinting and paperwork, Scully was paraded in front of the world's media.
I will be first giving a...
The months of hard work had paid off. They had their man.
What we're interested in is whether you have any remorse, whether you admit to what you've done, which is sexual abuse, and of course, murder.
Of course I have remorse.
Why, of course?
Why, you think people don't have remorse?
No, I'm asking you, as somebody who is a repeat offender here, who went on the run, who's only here because you've been caught, not because you turned yourself in. At what point do you actually feel sorry for what you've done? Is it at the point where you're captured?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. That's a good question. Well done. That's a very good question. At what point do you feel remorse? I think there's different degrees of remorse all the way through. Your greatest remorse comes when you finally realise the extent of what you've done.
And at what point was that?
At what point was that? I can't answer that honestly yet.
Why isn't it the point where you're actually raping somebody, violently torturing them? Why isn't it at the point when you kill a child? Why isn't it then? Why don't you realise the extent of what you've done at that point?
Maybe you should ask a psychiatrist that question. Not me.
I'm asking the man who did it.
Yeah.
While Scully ponders whether or not he's sorry for all the police who brought him down, there's still an ongoing price to pay.
Or whenever I remember the video, sometimes I cannot really help myself. I cried. Oh.
Even now, still.
Because I can, actually feel the pain that the youngest victim had suffered during the time in the video. So.
The one thing that comes from watching the footage for me is the vicarious trauma associated with the policing of these activities, the real challenges for people who work in the system, who have to watch these videos. They may be in court complexes like this where they have to review these images. It affects lots of people's lives for a long time.
I was having nightmares until we caught Scully. Yeah, I don't think you can ever get it out of your head.
It just got crazier and crazier for you, and sicker, and you'd already committed murder. Where was it going to end? What was the next level for you?
There was no next level.